I was like, wow, I just delivered this kick-ass business summit that will help our business, and you're going to tell me off? But I've had the luck of having some really strong managers and mentors in my life, Victor being one of them, and I trusted his judgment call on this one.
Welcome to How I Made It in Marketing from Marketing Sherpa. We scour pitches from hundreds of creative leaders and uncover specific examples. Not just trending ideas or buzzword-laden schmaltz. Real-world examples to help you transform yourself as a marketer. Now, here's your host, the Senior Director of Content and Marketing at Marketing Sherpa, Daniel Burstein, to tell you about today's guest.
I see this in the tech world all the time. We get so complex talking about our products, right? The feeds and speeds and all these great technologies, but does anyone understand the benefit to them? Hey, I'm sure that's true in many other products as well. We've got a great example from the world of sports today. How keeping it simple led to 525,000 tickets sold to the Ice Hockey World Championship. Our guest is also going to share other lessons from what she's made. You are nothing without the people around you, and positioning marketing as a commercial discipline, something we all need to learn how to do. Plus, she's going to share stories from the people she collaborated with, illustrating lessons like, if you master stakeholder management and getting people to buy into your plan or idea, the sky is the limit. The power of being a humble leader when called for, and if you have dreams, pursue them or let them go. Joining me today is Maja Frohlen Sand-Grimnitz, the Director of Global Marketing for Consumer Gaming at EPOS. Thanks for joining us, Maja.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. And so I'm just going to do a quick rundown of your LinkedIn. So some interesting things that jumped out at me so people can understand your background. I see you were a marketing consultant at MasterCard. You were the Senior Director of Commercial Development at One Championship, where you worked with brand partners like Disney, L'Oreal, LG, and many more. You were the Head of Global Marketing for Consumer Gaming at Sennheiser Communications, and now you are the Director of Global Marketing for Consumer Gaming at EPOS. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, EPOS is actually the, new brand for the old Sennheiser Communication. We were a joint venture. And at one point, our owners, the Demand conglomerate, decided to kind of move ahead and Sennheiser in a different direction. And out of that came a new company. So we are this weird hybrid of a company that's been around for 15 years, but a completely new brand in a highly competitive market. And my role, I came on board just when we did the demerger, was simply, that's not the right word to use, but was to roll out the brand in the gaming space. So headsets, audio peripherals for gamers, content creators, and streamers. So that little task of making a new brand work in that very, very competitive market. And that's what I go to job or work every day to do.
Great. And you wear some pretty cool looking headphones right now that I can see. Are those EPOS headphones?
They are EPOS headphones, yes, and I also have my streaming mic. We launched a whole new portfolio last year with our new brand EPOS. We're moving from our old portfolio that's Sennheiser branded and into the EPOS branded portfolio. So it's been quite the ride, and I've been part of building the whole global marketing team that's making this brand come to life out in the world.
Okay, very cool. And we're going to learn a lesson from your time at EPOS in just a minute. But first, let's look at some of your previous roles. So your first lesson from one of the things you made in your marketing career was to keep it simple. Tell us about this lesson when you were the CMO at Carlsberg HQ.
Well, I joined Carlsberg as my first job, actually. So I wasn't the CMO at Carlsberg. I was the CMO at the Ice Hockey World Championship. Okay. But as Carlsberg, which was my very first job right out of my master degree, which, by the way, was in finance. I was heading for the bank and investment world. And then I got into this job and my heart was, won over by marketing. My mentor and my first manager, he's had one mantra, and he was like, keep it simple. The moment you start to overcomplicate marketing and start to think, that you can foresee every little thing and get every little detail right from the start, you're going to overcomplicate it. It's going to take too long to get to market with what you want to do. And you're going to forget what was that one thing you actually wanted to happen with what you're doing. When I joined many years later as CMO of the Ice Hockey World Championship, which was taking place in Denmark, the first thing I thought was, well, I'm selling tickets. We had one way of revenue, and that was ticket sales. And I'm selling tickets to a sport that isn't big in this market. It's also a world championship that happens every year. So I also needed to sell to foreigners. But why should they come to Denmark? These ice hockey fans would wait for next year where it's taking place in, say, Russia or Sweden, like a true ice hockey nation. And I was like, well, I need to then start educating people about ice hockey and the sport, and it's the project grew bigger and bigger, and suddenly it just hit me. We got to keep it simple. We have 1.5 years to make these sales. We can't educate a whole population about a new sport. We can't make Denmark into the new ice hockey nation towards the big group of ice hockey fans abroad. And so I turned it around and said, okay, what is it actually we're selling here? Let's get back to the root of what we're selling here. We're selling entertainment. You go to sport to get entertained, to have fun with your friends, to enjoy yourself. And if you can't go to the sport you want to go to, then you go to the movie, or you go out for dinner, or you do something else for entertainment. And then we made that one simple line that what we were selling here was like a blockbuster movie. It was ice hockey, yes, but really we wanted people to be thinking, I don't care if I know ice hockey or not, but this is the event I can't miss because it's the blockbuster of the year, so I gotta go. And that simple little tweak suddenly meant that we could go out to a much broader audience. It became so clear for us what it was we wanted to do. We wanted to entertain people. And we wanted them to come in and have fun, and we wanted them years from the event taking place to be talking about that time when they went with their friends or family to the Ice Hockey World Championship. It was a completely different take. It took a lot of convincing of a lot of our stakeholders, but yeah, in the end, we managed to sell 525,000 tickets. So we did something right on that one.
Well done. Well, I think there's a lot of lessons there for any marketer with any product. I mean, one lesson for me. I live in Florida, so I was shocked to hear ice hockey wasn't big in like every place north of here. But you know, so that's probably true for sports. Like, you didn't want to try to sell the technicalities of ice hockey to a group that didn't understand ice hockey. But like I said, I worked in technology for many years, and technology companies have that problem very frequently where, you know, if you have like a very technical oriented marketing team or technical oriented sales team, they're focused on these speeds and feeds and all these things. And you understand where in the organization that might fit, you know, in like a CTO role, that might make sense. But when you're selling into the business, and we're going to get into a great example in a bit about you having to communicate business level when you were marketing level. But if you're tech and you're selling into the business, and then you're talking about all these deep technology things, you know, it's kind of like talking about the deep, you know, different rules and stuff of ice hockey. People don't care, right? So what matters to them, right? Their business goals. And in the case of what you did, what was beautiful is what matters to them is, well, even if you don't know about ice hockey and you don't want to learn all the rules, you know, everyone loves being entertained. So I think it was the heroes are coming, right? That was your line for your campaign.
That was it was back to that blockbuster idea, right? What do you do in sport? What do you love? You love to cheer for your fellow countrymen, whether or not you know what they are competing. Hey, we in Denmark, we got up one year during the Olympics in the middle of the night. It was happening in Japan that year, to watch curling. No one knew what curling was in Denmark. For some reason, we were doing well all of a sudden. And people all over the country would get up in the middle of the night to watch a sport they had no clue on. But why? Because they were entertained, and because they were cheering for their countrymen.
Get entertained.
And I think to your point, right, it's we tend to get a little bit into our own bubble. I see it also in the world I'm in today. We are so into our products and so proud of them, as we rightly should be. But we tend to make the mistake that everyone else is as much into them. And you should never forget the core, like the core ice hockey fans or the core audiophiles if you're selling headsets, where you need to show that you have the expertise. You can't come across as not having the expertise to go on that detailed level. But for a broad part of your audience, you got to find out what is that one thing they're looking for. And it's not always what you find the most interesting necessarily.
It's not what we care about. It's what they care about. It's what we got to focus on. Yeah. But some other numbers too, just to mention. I think it was over 130 million Danish kroners, I guess, in sales. That was 116% of the target. became the 5th largest world championship ever hosted. 52% of tickets were sold abroad and 48% of tickets were sold in Denmark. So just one last question, but you mentioned having to sell Denmark to the world. What did you do with the campaign there of getting more than half the tickets from outside of Denmark?
We went a bit in the same direction and just said, look, we know you can go every year to watch your favorite sport, and you could probably go to a country where they are a lot more like a true, to be fair, ice hockey nation. We're more a soccer nation. But look, if you come to our place, we're going to give you the best party of the year. Combine that with the sport that you love, what's not. And then, by the way, we partnered with all the tourist organizations in Denmark. Because there was, of course, a great interest in them in using this to promote all the things you can do in Denmark so that you could make a trip out of it. And we partnered with like the hotel business and restaurant business so that, the host cities became an attraction on their own.
There's a great lesson there, too, for all conference marketers. So we had the Marketing Sherpa Summit for many years. And I would be excited like, oh, well, people come to the summit because, I would do interviews on stage. We'd do these very detailed case studies. That's why people come to the summit. And I'm sure some people did, but we talked to a lot of them. And, we had it at the Aria in Las Vegas. And they're like, well, yeah, not to put you down, but, it was between this or Indianapolis. And we're like, hey, we'd like to come to the Aria in Las Vegas in February when it's like minus 20 degrees in our hometown. So anyone hosting a conference, I think there's a great lesson there from Maya as well. Well,
exactly.
Let's talk about your next lesson. You said you are nothing without the people around you, and this was a great lesson for anyone in leadership. So this was in your time in Singapore, I think. So tell us what happened here.
Yeah, so I lived in Singapore for 8 years, and 5 of those I were part of building and launching a new sports media brand called One Championship. It was our version of the UFC, which I guess is the well-known one more globally. And I came in when we were 5 people just starting this company. Today it's a global company that has TV production and you name it. But I was part of the beginning. I was brought in to sit next to the CEO and kind of be his right hand to get things moving and to make sure that we have a project. This is what we need to get it done, move people in the right direction. And I happen to be very good at that. But what then happens sometimes is that you forget that getting people to follow you, if you really want to do it in a good way, is not just saying, this is what I need, go do it. But it's actually to get them to buy into your vision for what you're delivering and have that team feel and team ownership. So we were hosting the very first summit for the industry, which was mixed martial arts. We had VIPs from the industry flying in from all over the world. We had the corporate partners, the television networks, everyone coming to Singapore. This was where we were to position our new company and brand as the leader out of the APAC region. And of course, I was very focused on that. I had some great people with me. And one night, just before we have our opening day, I'm in my room at the hotel where we are hosting it. And I'm sitting and I'm getting the rundowns and itineraries and everything done. And I remember I forgot something in the main conference hall, and I go down there and my whole team is there and they're packing gift bags. And in my head, I'm just thinking, great, they're on it. Gift bags will be ready. All is good. And I walk in, I get my stuff and I leave again. What I didn't think about was for all of them, they saw a leader, a senior person in the company coming in, not recognizing that they were sitting at 2 a.m. in the night packing gift bags, which, by the way, wasn't the job of half of them, right? They were marketeers and salespeople and what have you. And then leaving again, not even offering acknowledgement or a hand to pitch in. And that is probably one of the toughest lessons I've learned, because that really humbled me in learning the hard way that, if you don't have your team buying into your vision and feeling ownership and feel that you're lifting together, then you lose them. And afterwards, yes, we delivered a hell of a conference, but we also, I also had to do a lot of damage control afterwards for them to respect me again as a senior person in the company, because I lost respect on that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for admitting that story. And we're going to get into, in the podcast a little later, how Maya overcame that. But I think there's a great lesson there, not just for business leadership, but for marketing as well. Because when we don't give people an understanding and a reason behind things, then they're just going to come to their own conclusions, and their own conclusions may have nefarious aims behind them, or whatever. They might not think well of us or our brands. And so something I had thought of when you told that story was Jacksonville, Florida, here where I live, is a very fast-growing city. And so there's a lot of dump trucks on the road. And these big dump trucks, they have a sign, and it says, like, keep back 300 feet. And they're all over the highway and the road. And when I'm driving, I think, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'll drive wherever I want. I'm not going to keep back 300 feet. Then I was behind this one truck, and it said, keep back 300 feet, not responsible for broken windshields. And that was a huge difference for me. It's like, okay, you gave me a reason and a justification for why I should keep back 300 feet, and I will now keep back. And so I think it's the same in that situation and many other situations. You're probably working your butt off in that hotel room upstairs, but they didn't realize that. Right? All they see is someone coming down, doing whatever, and leaving. They don't see someone pitching in. And I'm sure that little thing in hindsight, if you'd said, hey, here's what I'm working on now. Thanks for doing this, guys. Here's what I'm working on. We're going to have an awesome conference. That little, two-sentence conversation might have made a huge difference.
That little acknowledgement and maybe also, as you said, put like a meaning into what you're doing, saying, guys, that you guys are packing this means that all the corporate sponsors we have, they get what we have promised them when we sold them this as part of the marketing package. So your job, even though you're packing gift bags, is actually incredibly important for the funding for next year's event.
That is such a good point in leadership, putting meaning into the work. So I've read this article once, it's great, about the production of iPads in a factory in China. And the reporter had brought one of the factory workers over. I mean, they were working, 7 days a week, 12 hours, incredibly hard workers. And her job, all she did every day, all day, was she took a microchip and she glued it to a motherboard. That's it, microchip motherboard. And so the reporter showed her the iPad, and she actually had no idea what she was making. She just saw, microchip motherboard, and she actually burst into tears when she saw the iPad she was making, because she didn't realize she was part of creating such a beautiful thing. And so I think that's another great leadership example. When everyone understands the role they are playing in the organization and what they're building, they're a lot more motivated than if you just say, here's a task, go do it. It might be more efficient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter what level you're on in an organization, right? That'll always, you just have to put yourself in people's shoes. Well, I also want to know from my managers or peers, why am I doing this, right? How does it make value?
Yeah, well, so let's talk about putting yourself in people's shoes in kind of the opposite direction, in the C-level leaders in an organization. So you mentioned another lesson here, positioning marketing as a commercial discipline. So how did you learn this lesson?
Well, it's something that, first of all, have always really interested me. As I might have mentioned, I did a master in finance and thought I was heading into investment banking, and then I found out that that's no fun. And I ended up in marketing, but I'm a very numbers and data person. So that need to link marketing to the commercial part of the business has always been really something I was interested in. And then I came into the role I'm in now, which is a company that has been very much a B2B company, if you can still say that. I know it's today we're human to human, but using that old-fashioned term. And suddenly I discovered that, they spoke a very different language. And also when you go into C-level managers who are not into the marketing day to day, they speak a completely different language, right? They speak a language around business impact numbers and monitoring day to day the stock of the company. And suddenly you come in and you talk about great creative solutions and look and isn't this amazing, and look how creative this is, and it easily then becomes, as has always been the pitfall of marketing, right? The fun and gimmick department to be extreme, right? So in the role I'm in now, it was simply just a requirement that I were able to go in and explain. We have this new brand. We're rolling it out in a consumer space. What does that mean? What does that require of resources? Because, I needed to ensure I had the resources and the budget to set us up for success. But to explain that, I had to go a completely different route of linking everything to what business impact will we have. And that's tough, right? I think we're often still trying to solve that in marketing. How do you measure what a sponsorship will do for you at the bottom line of the company? But really what we do in our company, we always work with the marketing funnel. And then, on one side here are the marketing metrics and the inputs that goes into the machine at each level of the funnel. And then here are the business impact inputs that come out to the degree possible, but then tracking through the funnel how they kind of link. So from getting people into the top line of the funnel and getting more and more people into the EPOS funnel, so to speak, and then pushing them through all the way to point of sale. What is the input, which is marketing, that goes in, and what's the business impact that comes out? And I think that's an ongoing challenge, and I think it's something that, you know, we have a tendency in marketing to sometimes complain that we don't have a position at the board levels and so on. But that's also because we got to learn to speak this language. We got to learn to speak the business impact language at marketing. And maybe sometimes we also have to develop new terminologies to speak it, because I'm not certain it's always completely there how we link the whole funnel to what impact it has.
Yeah. Now, did you go into the meeting earlier, you presented it one way, and then you came back and you presented another way and it had a bigger impact, or?
Yeah, exactly. I went in first, and also, you know, I thought, well, you asked me to come with a plan for how to roll out a brand. And here it is. Here's the grand plan. I will do this campaign. It will cost this much. I will do this displays in these stores. It'll cost that much, you know. And they sat there and they were like, okay, so you showed us a lot of nice images and mock-ups, and then you gave us a really large number.
The cost, the large number is the cost, right?
Yeah, exactly. The budget, right? But how does it all track back to the world that we live in, which is top line and bottom line management on a day-to-day level, right?
And then you came back with those numbers and had a much better.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's today we live in a very digital world. We can track every spend at all levels, but we still have an upper funnel level, which is the more difficult things to track in terms of I'm running a billboard, for example. Or, you know, I'm doing a sponsorship. How does that impact directly to bottom line? But we got to do our best in demonstrating that. And we got to talk. We have a tendency to talk input, you know, opening rates, number of emails we send out, number of people we reach. We got to get to talking business impact. Okay, but what did those number of people, how many then went in and actually spent time on our page or bought something, right? So I think we tend to forget there's input and there's business impact.
Yeah, you know, the biggest skill we have as marketers, hopefully, are things like empathy and curiosity. And so you talked about being a marketing leader. You know, as a marketing leader, usually somewhere in the middle of an organization. So there's the people that report to us. We kind of have to understand what they're going through. But I'll tell you something that opened my eyes earlier in my career about what business leaders are going through. I thought the people leading the company, well, they're just making all the decisions. They're not reporting to everyone. They're doing what they want. And then I had a chance to be on earnings calls. So I would help with the communications for earnings calls. And it really opened my eyes and checked my eyes earlier in my career, because this was a software company that was growing pretty fast. It was like double-digit growth. But if let's say, you know, if it grew 11% that quarter, but if analysts predicted, you know, 14% or 12%, you know, that was going to be a tough call. And those analysts were hitting them hard about getting into all these detailed numbers. And then if you get into an international organization too, there's all the exchange rates and all these things. And so it just kind of opened my eyes when I, you know, working with these, you know, leaders of the organization, because I was in executive communications, I thought, well, they're just calling these shots and they're doing what they want to do. And then I realized we really all at the end of the day have to communicate to someone, and whoever you're communicating with, if you can help understand who are they going to have to go to next, and that includes, you know, the CEO, whoever, you know, C-level people in the organization are, like you said, are they going to the board? Are you going to be at the board? Who's the board going to have to communicate with? Shareholders, analysts, you know, or if it's a private company, you know, maybe a family that owns it, you know, really understanding that. And what I found is positioning those people for success. If you can position those people for the success for that next conversation they have to have, then you will be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, we just got to remember that's also part of our job as marketeers. If we want marketing to truly be what it can be within a commercial discipline, right? Something that the company rests on and that will carry the company's success. But then we need to be able to talk this language and exactly help our stakeholders explain it to the next level and the next level.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is key. You talk about, making sure marketing has a seat at the table. I think what marketing can own in the organization better than anyone is an understanding of the customer. So like one thing we've produced is how to model your customer's mind. It's an easy tool to help, you understand how to get an understanding of what customers are doing and thinking. And with things like A/B testing or, there's other ways you can actually get some data and metrics behind, some revenue behind these things. But if you come to the table too and you're able to say, hey, here's some proof that I understand the customer, you have a reason for being there. Because as Peter Drucker said, the only reason that organization exists is to serve a customer. And when it serves a customer, other good things happen, profit, and shareholders are happy. But serving a customer, so that's I think really another key thing is getting that understanding of the customer. I mean, did that play in at all when you were kind of rolling out ePost to try to hit customers more?
One of the first thing I did when I came into the organization was we had done initially, that was just before I joined, there'd been done a study on, we have a part of the business that's gaming, audio peripherals, which is why I work on, then we have a part that's enterprise solution. We were looking into, can you have the same brand across that? And through that, we identified customers' purchase decision at a very functional level, right? So like I look for ANC in my headsets or a microphone that can do this or that. One of the first things I did when I came in was I added a layer to that study and I looked into what are the emotional purchase drivers. And specifically when we did a research where we mapped the marketplace, but from the consumer's point of view. So we had them place all our competitor brands within a marketplace. We had them applying emotional purchase drivers for each brand. And I think that's exactly to your point. That's what we need to own in marketing, that expertise, because, and it really should be what we naturally own, right? Because if we do our job the right way, then we have the pulse on the finger for our consumers and the marketplace at the various levels. So that was very much part of how we started to get the whole organization to think in this more consumer-centric and B2C way.
Great, and that really kind of ties back to your ice hockey example. Don't just get into all the technical aspects to the customer, understand the emotions that drive it. So that's great. Okay, so we talked about some of the things that Maya made in her marketing career. That's a great thing we have as marketers, in a lot of other industries, a lot of other professions, you don't really walk away saying, I made this thing. I think another key thing of marketing is we collaborate with people. There's all these teams we get to work with, like Maya was saying earlier. And so let's see what we can learn from the people that Maya has collaborated with. So the first person, and feel free to correct any mispronunciations I have, is Kjeld Strudal, the founder. It's currently the founder of Brand Activators and Sports Marketing Strategies. And from Kjeld, you learned if you master stakeholder management and getting people to buy into your plan or idea, the sky is the limit. So how did you learn this from Kjeld?
Yeah, Kjeld is he gave me a lot of things. He was actually also my manager at Carlsberg, so he was also the one with Keep It Simple. So I have a lot to thank this guy for. We sat in the sports marketing department of Carlsberg, and sponsorships was a huge pillar within the marketing mix, still is of that brand and the company. And one of my roles were to do the activation of the global sponsorships we did. So Kjeld would get the sponsorships, he would lay out the plan, and I was then the one executing on it. And we were at an event that Carlsberg has built where we invite the top 3 male and female skiers within the Alpine World Cup. So you have some of the best athletes from their discipline present here. And in my head, they were, well, you're here to help me promote my brand, right? That's what we're paying you for. That's why you're here. And we have the grand marketing plan for what I need to get out of you guys to promote Carlsberg towards the consumer. And I were briefing them, and we had to go to this bar to do an event. And I was in my marketing and business terminology. We have off-trade and on-trade, and bars, they are on-trade. And I was like, and when we hit the on-trade, this is how I want you to act. And, I did feel that like blank space face, right? But I was young and I had my eyes on the target. So I was like, yes, let's get going. And they like, you could hear them sigh. And then, yeah, okay, another marketeer telling us what to do, but we have to. And they walked off. And Kel, he the very good mentor he was, he pulled me aside and he was like, you got to remember that you need to get people to buy into your idea. You need to manage them, speak their language, get them to buy into what you're doing. So yes, for you, they're going to this off-trade event and doing something for a brand. But for them, it's like, another sponsor engagement that we have to do. Or you could turn it around. They are actually having that very few times of the year where they can relax with friends because they're all friends at that level. And they are not here to compete. They've been given the time to go and do this, and they're going to a bar. It could actually be quite fun for them, but you got to sell it in like that. So all about that stakeholder management and how to get people again to buy into to what it is, like your vision, but on their terms.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes as marketers, we could do a good job of marketing to the customer, but then others, like people inside our own organization, or in that case, brand spokespeople, we forget, hey, you kind of got to treat everyone that same way. Understand where they're coming from, understand really the value proposition to them. So that's a great example. So moving on to another story. From Victor Cui, the president, he's currently the president and CEO of the Edmonton Elks, the power of being a humble leader when called for. So if we go back to the gift bag story, where you were in the hotel, you came back, people were stuffing the gift bag, you went up. Victor had a great way to solve that, to kind of patch that with the team for you, right? So how did he go about that?
So he heard what had happened and he saw how it also affected having me as a senior person. He needed someone that seemed respected and wanted to listen to, right? And he said, look, I need to get it back to where you are at the rest of the team's level. Now you've acted in a way that kind of looked like you were elevated above them. So what I'm going to do in the team meeting when we evaluate after this summit is I'm basically going to tell you off for that behavior. And I was like, wow. I just delivered like this kick-ass, sorry to say, business summit that will help our business, and you're going to tell me off. But, I've had the luck of having some really strong managers and mentors in my life, Victor being one of them, and I trusted his judgment call on this one. So I said, okay, let's do it. And he did that, and it worked. It worked the way he said, afterwards it was like, okay, to the rest of the team, I was like, okay, so it's not accepted we act like that in this company, and no one is elevated above someone else independent of what their title is. And for me, the lesson was, I just, sometimes you just gotta like take, just bend your head and say, okay, I'll take this one. I might think that's so unfair and I didn't mean it that way, but sometimes you just gotta say, okay, but that was how it came across, and this is how I can best make good on that again.
Yeah, that humility lesson is something that comes up in the podcast over and over and over, because we marketers, I've got an ego. If you're going to go out and create things and be a marketer, you're kind of that type of person that kind of has to have an ego. But when is a leadership lesson is so important to swallow it up. I remember talking to Michelle Burrows, it was episode 3 of the podcast, and she was talking about someone she'd worked with earlier in her career who is now the CMO of Snowflake, one of the biggest IPOs ever. And she said the thing that really struck her about this person wasn't that she was so brilliant and smart or creative or such a driver or any of these other things we would think. It's that she was humble. Like, she really understood, like, hey, here's the piece that I'm good at. Here's the piece that I can really do well. And I need to surround myself with these other people that can do these other pieces, and I need to make them shine. And that was the biggest lesson. Mark.
Exactly. And I think, like, to your point, also, sometimes we marketeers, we need to believe in things 100% and believe we can do it because we set ourselves on the most impossible tasks at times, right? That's part of the role. But there's also, that remembering that you can always learn and listen to others. And if you forget that, you also risk that, yes, I'm right 90% of the time, but that 10% where I'm not right, or I could get even better by listening to input or remembering to bring the team around me on the journey. That's actually where we make the magic, right?
Oh, yeah. And our biggest leaps in our own career, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the last one. Iris Isabella England, the CEO and founder of Play Your Talent. And from Iris, you learned if you have dreams, pursue them or let them go. How'd you learn this?
I came back from Singapore, spending 8 years out there, being part of building a new company. So that's, anyone who's done that knows that that's a crazy journey. And Then I went straight into this 2.5-year project with Ice Hockey World Championship, which was night and day thinking that. And suddenly I was done and I was, okay, but then what? For the first time in my career, I decided to talk to a coach. And one of the things that quickly came up was, I had so many ideas, and one day I will write this book, and one day I will make this business network, and one day I will be in this kind of position. But I'm also so caught up in everyday life as everyone else and my career right here and now. And she was like, okay, but then let's start to actually get concrete about these things, because you need to start today where you want to end up in 5 or 10 years. You need to start that work today. And if you don't do that, then it constantly will consist to be this one day I will do at the back of your head, but it'll just stress you out, right? So either take action on it or move on to something else. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So it's not enough for me to have dreamed. You actually demand of me that I have thought through how I'm going to reach it and that I'll start doing something already now. And that was... It was a nice wake-up call, but also, so much energy once you start to get concrete, because, the worst thing that can happen is that you won't succeed with it, but then you tried, right? Yeah.
I'm not really a fan of the word personal branding and stuff, right? But I think there's a good idea behind it that, we as marketers, we look at an organization and we don't just say like, oh, I hope we'll get 525,000 ticket sales, right? We actually have a plan, a very specific plan, a media plan, all these different things. But when it comes to our own selves and our own careers, it's so much easier to have, like you said, just an intention, right? Just an idea of what we want to do and not get very specific about how we're going to hit that. So that's great. So lastly, hey, thank you for all those stories. I just want to ask one final question for the audience that we could leave them on. What are the key qualities of an effective marketer, in your opinion?
I think the effective marketeer is one that stays curious.
Yes.
Constantly wants to learn and as I said, have that finger on the pulse. What's happening out there? And then is one who is able to, as I constantly talk to my team about, get out of their own bubble, right? Put yourself in your consumer's point of view or place yourself in your brand's shoes, but get out of your little bubble where that's how we are as human beings, right? We get caught up in everyday work and then suddenly we only see things from our point of view. And then it's the marketeer who can actually also understand the commercial side of the business and relate the two. And that's not to say that you are to be the numbers person who can only talk, lower funnel metrics, conversion rates, and so on. But it's to say that you understand the overall business and commercial strategy, and you can relate your marketing strategy directly to that. And you can speak the language that combines those two. You become that bridge between the creative part of marketing and then the business.
That's great. That's another way to get out of your own bubble. And I mean, really in this conversation, this sprawling conversation, we talked about getting out of your own bubble, not only to understand customers who may not even understand your product, like the ice hockey example, but, the people that report to you, the people you report to, the leaders in your organization, people you're sponsoring as spokespeople for your brand. So I think a lot of great examples from this podcast about what you just mentioned, Maja. Well, thanks for joining us. It was such a fun conversation all the way up there from Denmark.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great to get to talk about all these things.
Great. And thank you to everyone for listening.
Thank you for joining us for How I Made It in Marketing with Daniel Burstein. Now that you've gotten inspiration for transforming yourself as a marketer, get some ideas for your next marketing campaign from Marketing Sherpa's extensive library of free case studies at marketingsherpa.com. That's marketingsherpa.com.